Can this homeless musician play piano for food? His insane talent will shock you. The crowd gathered outside the little cafe like moths to a flame. But the flame wasn't just the coffee roaster. No, it was the rough-looking man hunched over the keys of that old, worn-out piano they'd dragged into the alley. The paint was chipped. The keys were yellowed. Yet, the sounds pouring out sweet, soaring notes made you forget the dingy surroundings. People stopped mid-conversation, eyes wide, jaws dropped. Was this a joke? A prank? Something deep within him stirred as his long fingers danced with a magical fluidity you'd only expect from a virtuoso pouring his soul into every stroke. There was a pulse in his music, raw and electric, sending shivers down spines. He wore a tattered jacket, its faded fabric telling tales of cold nights spent dreaming of glory. A cap sat low on his brow, casting shadows over eyes that gleamed with a fervor, the kind that spoke of both pain and hope. His hollow cheeks framed a face hardened by outdoor living, yet every note he struck was like an embrace, warm and inviting. But what haunted everyone was the question that hung in the air as thick as the steam wafting from the cafe. Who was he? How could someone so desperately alone be so incredibly talented? The whispers began. Is he for real? Just look at him. He's nothing but a bum. But listen. People exchanged glances, laughter and skepticism brushing against awe and disbelief. The atmosphere buzzed, filled with this intoxicating blend of curiosity and shock. Then came the awkward pauses, the kind where silence felt heavy enough to crush. How could someone so gifted end up on the streets, playing for scraps, or, if he was lucky, food? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With the sweet sounds still hanging in the air, one elderly woman stepped forward, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she fished out a crumpled bill from her pocket. The musician caught her eye, a flicker of recognition passing between them. Was it pity or something deeper? Others began to join her, reaching into their own pockets, collecting their change, their dollars, buzzing like bees around him. But he suddenly stopped playing, his fingers hovering over the keys. Did he sense something? A shift in energy? A burden weighing down his spirit? Then with intensity, he turned his gaze to the gathering crowd. The wind picked up, swirling leaves around them as if nature itself was holding its breath. What had he seen? In that fleeting moment, it felt as if he held the weight of everyone's dreams in his calloused hands. Would he rise or remain stranded in shadows, like the haunting chords of his last note? The distance between him and the crowd closed ever so slightly, but the questions remained. Who was this man really, and what was his story? A heartbeat of silence fell, hanging heavily in the air. The crowd shifted, eyes narrowing, searching for answers in the depths of his shadowed expression. Was he about to speak? Did he have a story waiting to unfurl like a tattered flag? And before he could grasp at the threads of that question, something unexpected shattered the moment. A man in a crisp suit moved through the throng, his presence sharp against the artistic chaos unfolding in the alley. He pushed past the gawking spectators with determination, his polished shoes clicking against the gritty ground. "Step aside," he barked, startling everyone. The crowd parted as if compelled by his force of will. The musicians stood rigid, the tension now electric between them. The man in the suit leaned in, eyes piercing, inspecting the artist as if he were a rare gemstone, desperately needing polishing. "You," he said, his voice rising above the murmurs. "You can play?" The homeless musician's breath hitched, and for a fleeting moment, fear flickered in his eyes. Was this stranger seeking to exploit his talent? Did he want to recruit him for some sordid schemes? But in truth, he couldn't quell the yearning that throbbed within a chance. An opportunity. He started, his voice hoarse, but the man cut him off. "Play." Show them what you can do." The insistence in his tone dared the musician to back down, but his pride, buried beneath layers of dirt and despair, ignited. With a swift breath, he sank back into the rhythm of his own heartbeat, channeling the desperation that enveloped him each long night alone. His fingers descended onto the keys once more. The first chord burst forth, bright and unyielding, unfurling into a melody that danced around the alley. The onlookers were riveted again, tossing anxiety aside. They watched as his presence grew, filling the gaps in the alley's shadows. He poured everything into every note, each one a fragment of his soul, a glimpse into the chaos and beauty of his life. Yet, as he played, the man in the suit wasn't just a spectator. He leaned in closer, whispering to a waiting assistant, whose hands were full of powerful-looking gadgets and a bright camera lens, ready to capture this unpolished diamond. A bidding war could be brewing before the notes even faded. Suddenly, the crowd began to murmur, but the words were different this time. Recently reignited hope mingled with whispers of opportunity. "Did you see his fingers? He's brilliant. He could go far." Eyes shifted from skepticism to curiosity, from mere spectatorship to potential salvation. The air crackled with electricity as the melody morphed into something spontaneous and breathtaking. But amidst it all, he felt a nagging doubt weaving through the music, a shadow lurking at the edges of his newfound moment. What did it mean if this performance led to something larger? What if they didn't want him for who he was, but for the talents he displayed? Would he be just another tool to them, used, discarded, left to dream again in the dark? As the last note lingered in the air, the crowd erupted into applause, cheers echoing like thunder. Yet, inside, the musician grappled with uncertainty. The great reveal beyond his hidden potential now loomed, but would he lose himself in the spotlight? While the crowd continued to cheer, a figure emerged in the distance, one he recognized too well. A ghost from his past, a specter of the life he once lived, winding closer with the intent of reclamation. Panic began to seep in. Who is that?" he thought, glancing nervously back at the audience, whose faces blurred before him. Time felt suspended, tight as a wound spring. What would happen when paths conjoin under the spotlight, revealing secrets long buried? And as the crowd erupted in noise, he could no longer ignore the shadow looming just beyond his reckoning. Would they take him to his dreams or lead him back to his nightmares? The cheers and applause melted into an unsettling haze, the musician's heart hammering against his ribcage like a caged bird. His focus darted nervously between the crowd and the approaching figure cloaked in the scars of their shared history. The world around him warped, the vibrant colors of hope fading into shades of dread. The crowd began to sway, a living wave of emotions. Some still clapped, while others whispered again, hushed tones rife with speculation. But the musician couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were on him, judging, prying, and not all were kind. He needed to shield his soul, to secure the fragile tendrils of recovery he was grasping. "Just keep playing. Just keep playing." The words tumbled through his mind like a mantra. He squeezed his eyes shut, trembling fingers dancing over the keys. Each touch became a desperate plea, an expression of anguish woven into the melody. His body moved instinctively, reminding him he was still alive in this moment, despite the shadows creeping in. Then, like a vulture circling overhead, the figure stepped into the periphery of his vision. Distinctive, unmistakable Charlie. The very name sent chills racing down his spine. Memories swelled like a tide, laughter mingled with betrayal. He had thought he left that life behind. But Charlie never wandered too far from him, always lurking, always waiting. "What are you doing here?" the musician muttered under his breath, even as the music swept him along, flowing like a river of emotions. On the edge of the crowd, Charlie watched, his expression inscrutable. The longer the musician played, the more he felt their unspoken history hang like mist between them. With each note, realization washed over him, the hunger of the past wrapped around him tightly, demanding recognition. The man in the suit, oblivious to the inner turmoil, leaned closer to his assistant, their whispered conversation drowned out by the fervor surrounding the performance. The melody shifted, the notes twisting into something darker, a reflection of the storm inside. Anguish poured out of him. Every soulful cry echoed the years lost, every crescendo a shout against the confines of a life he didn't choose. The crowd gasped, drinking in his despair, their faces illuminated by the urgency of a boy fighting to reclaim his dreams or perhaps a man battling his demons. More. Keep going, urged the man in the suit. But the musician's resolve crumbled, his heart lurching in fear as Charlie took a solitary step closer. What do you want? He could barely hear himself over the thunderous applause, but he choked out the question, raw and trembling. Charlie's lips curved into a smirk, but his eyes were eerily calm, void of warmth. You think you can just walk away? His voice sliced through the applause like a knife. You're not done yet. Your talent belongs to me, whether you like it or not. Beneath the weight of his words, the musician's heart lurched. The energy shifted again, uncertainty clouding the moment. The suit's assistant, now fully alert, aimed the camera at the scene unfolding. Would he capture the triumphant rise or the dramatic fall? Panic turned to rage, pulsating under the skin as the musician confronted the encroaching specter of his past. You don't own me, he shouted, the words rippling through the crowd, stealing their cheers and replacing them with gasps. Faces turned, eyebrows raised in shock. The music faltered, fingers stuttering on the keys as realization surged. The battle lines had been drawn, the stakes higher than ever. What would happen if he confronted Charlie? What if the ties still bound him tight? The crowd held its breath, a collective gasp hanging in the charged air. He had the power to change the narrative, but would he find himself, or would he succumb to the shadows? As uncertainty loomed ominously, the former musician stood on the precipice of the unknown, and all it would take was one decision to tip the scales. Would he shatter the chains of his past, or would he let them pull him back into the depths? The stunned silence enveloped the scene, wrapping tight around the musician like a vice. Faces in the crowd shifted between confusion and outrage, their murmurs hushed, threads of disbelief weaving through the tension. Time slowed as Charlie's smirk widened, revealing a sense of power that made the musician's stomach twist. You think shouting will free you? Charlie's voice dripped with disdain. He stepped closer again, the air thickening with unspoken threats. Each word weighed heavier than the last, yet the musician felt something inside him crack. He forced himself to breathe, to ground the fury and fear threatening to consume him. This wasn't just about Charlie anymore. It was about every moment he had fought to reclaim. With a shaky breath, he pressed his fingers back to the keys, feeling the cold smoothness beneath them. The melody he returned to flowed differently now, reflecting both defiance and despair. The notes swirled, twisting into a symphony of emotions that echoed his unbroken spirit. Yet with every chord, he could sense Charlie's eyes boring into him, slicing through the music like a blade. The crowd, craving authenticity, felt the shift. Some were entranced, others were horrified. Whispers turned to shouts, voices clashing, a cacophony of support and disapproval. "Don't give in," cried a woman with fiery eyes, fists raised. For a fleeting moment, the musician saw a glimmer of hope. "Look at them," Charlie spat, gesturing to the crowd. "They want the show, not the truth. You're just a puppet, and I hold the strings." "No," the musician shot back, his voice stronger, resonating with newfound resolve. "I control my fate, not you." With each declaration, he felt bravado seeping into his veins, intermingling with the music. The tempo soared, fusing vibrant notes with the raw energy bubbling within him. He was no longer the victim in this twisted game. He became the storyteller, reclaiming the narrative. But just as he began to feel the power of his voice, the man in the suit surged forward through the crowd like a tidal wave. "This is unbelievable," he exclaimed, clutching the camera, eyes alight with opportunity. "People need to see this." The moment became electric, with conflicting emotions surging in waves. The musician's fingers flew over the keys, striking chords that resonated with an unsettling truth, a battle cry for those who couldn't fight. Charlie's smirk faded, replaced by a dawning realization that he might lose control after all. Just as the final note trembled into the air, a loud crash echoed from behind the stage. Faces whipped around, shock replacing fervor. In an instant, chaos erupted as a dark figure stumbled into view, brandishing a weapon gleaming ominously under the stage lights. Screams pierced the previously tense atmosphere, sending a ripple of panic through the crowd. The musician's heart sank, blood rushing in his ears. "Get down!" he shouted instinctively, the applause forgotten as bodies surged in every direction. He turned, searching for Charlie, but the ominous figure had already stepped back, eyes locked on him, waiting to unleash whatever chaos loomed. Was fate determined by the strings of his past, or would he once again rise above the depths? The stage, once his refuge, now mirrored a battlefield. And just like that, everything shifted again. With panic swirling, his truth hung on a precipice. Would he face the real enemy, or would he falter, a victim once more? The looming threat just might write the next chapter of his life, and it could lead him somewhere dark, or finally set him free. The chaos swirled like a tempest, bodies scrambling, some falling as the crowd rushed toward the edges of the venue. The raw terror painted their faces while the dark figure loomed like a specter against the flickering stage lights. "Stay back." The musician's voice cut through the noise, fueled by instinct. He felt every bit of his being shift into overdrive, adrenaline pumping. Yet the weight of uncertainty coiled tightly around his throat. What did this figure want? The weapon glistened, a harsh contrast to the backdrop of shattered dreams. The dark figure held it firmly, eyes cold as ice piercing right through the pandemonium to lock onto him. In that brief moment, the musician saw something in their eyes that shook him: desperation. Was this person really the enemy, or was there a deeper story hidden behind the weapon's deadly shine? "Why are you doing this?" the musician shouted, his voice trembling but steady, grounding himself in the chaos. He couldn't break eye contact. The figure merely grinned, mouth twisting into something malevolent. "You think you're free? You're all ants beneath someone's boot." A sinking feeling gripped his stomach, a truth half-formed, yet still terrifying. This wasn't just an attack on him, it was an assault on something more significant. But as the words grated against the musician's resolve, his intuition sparked. "You're wrong," he thundered. "This moment is ours. We decide our narrative." He wasn't just fighting for himself. The pulse of the crowd began to thrum like a heartbeat synced to his rising spirit. A woman broke through the throng, her fists still raised, eyes ablaze. "Yeah, show him," she yelled, rallying those around her, a lightning rod amidst the storm of fear. Something electrifying surged through the crowd. Voices rose, chants began, and beneath the angst, a collective courage ignited. With every chord he played, the music propelled them. It was as if the notes joined together, swelling into a barrier against the weapon aimed at him. "What are you doing?" "You can't." Charlie's voice faded against the cacophony of resistance. It was as if the musician was no longer alone on that stage. The crowd had risen with him, backing him against the encroaching darkness. Suddenly, the figure staggered, a flicker of doubt flashing across their face. The weapon wavered, an uncertainty creeping in. Was it possible that their conviction was swaying a soul tangled in despair? The crowd surged closer, a united front against the fear that had threatened to atomize their strength. Then, a deafening roar erupted as the dark figure took a step back, confusion etched into their features. And, just like that, the energy shifted again. Maybe fear and power traveled down different paths. "Join us," the musician cried, his fingers flying over the keys, igniting bursts of unyielding energy. The melody surged, weaving through the crowd's resonance, awakening something deep within each soul. Rallying, the atmosphere crackled with potential as the weapon dropped, clattering to the ground, banished by the music's defiant force. But just as he thought freedom was within reach, the crashing reality returned like a wave against the shore. From the shadows behind the curtain, a second figure emerged, this time with eyes wide, flanked by heavy-set security guards. "I can't let this happen," they shouted, pushing through the remnants of the crowd, wielding authority like a weapon of its own. With the stage trembling beneath him, the musician's resolve burned fervently. He had fought too hard to back down now. But would this new force snuff out the light he had ignited? In that chilling moment, he faced not just his fear, but something far worse, the uncertain grip of control that threatened to rip away this chance of liberation. What awaited him? Would they silence him, or could he turn this impending storm into a new song? His hands hovered above the keys as uncertainty loomed. The sudden clash of authority jolted the crowd's energy. Eyes darted from the dark figure to the newcomer, confusion mingling with fear. The musician's heart raced, caught in the tumult. Could he really shift the tide, or was it all slipping away? "Everyone, stay together," he shouted, discovering a fierce determination rising within him. The audience, still pulsing from his earlier rallying cry, seemed hesitant but still energized. The security team moved closer, their bulky frames imposing in the flashing lights. "This is over," one guard barked, stepping to the front. The musician could sense the weight of their intent, the danger crackling in the air. "No, it's not over." He struck the keys with a fervent intensity, the melody pleading and fierce, shimmering through the tension like light in the dark. The music was a call to arms, a declaration of their collective strength. The momentary pause in the crowd shifted as people began to sway, their resolves strengthening again. They echoed his rhythms, chanting words yet unformed, but the emotion was purely palpable. "Fight back," someone cried, gathering the spirit of rebellion. With each strong note, the musician poured his heart into the melody, letting it reverberate through the platform. The guards exchanged glances, unease etching deeper lines into their faces. He could see it, the irrefutable connection between him and the crowd, an unbreakable bond of human experience. Then, as the music soared, he caught a glimpse of the dark figure, still lingering in the background. Had they stepped back to reevaluate their motives? The crowd hadn't given them what they expected. Was this power truly something they could seize, or was it part of a bigger game? Just then, the lead guard lifted a hand to silence the crowd, but his attempt was drowned out by a roaring crescendo. The musician felt invigorated. Real power hadn't resided with the guards or the shadowy figure. It pulsed through the hearts of everyone gathered. "Play! Play for your freedom!" shouted the woman with blazing eyes, urging the crowd to unite. The vibrancy of her voice sparked something profound. They were not just a collective of individuals caught in chaos anymore. They were warriors of their own narrative, emboldened by the music's spirited defiance. Tension mounted as the guards advanced. "You're disturbing the peace. Stand down." Their words thudded against the crowd's momentum, creating a fissure of authority they struggled to penetrate. The energy buckled, flickering like a light bulb on the verge of burnout. The musician's hands danced over the keys, creating a visceral response that resonated deep within. What was peace when freedom flickered at their fingertips? He could feel courage manifest in every note, every heartbeat echoing the struggle within the room. But the guards were relentless, pushing forward as the shadows loomed over the stage, ready to overpower not just him, but the very essence of the moment. Then a gasp rose from the crowd, and the musician's heart sank. The dark figure had resurfaced at the edge of the stage, a glimmer of despair still dancing in their icy eyes. What were they holding? Was it another weapon, or had they come to share their own story? In that breath-holding moment, he realized something vital. The lines between enemy and ally were blurred. What if the darkness had a tale to tell? "Stop!" he yelled suddenly, and the music fell to a hush. All eyes turned to him and the figure as he faced the unease threatening to unravel everything. Would the haunting past bind them together, or would they become entwined in a battle neither wanted? A gripping silence hung in the air, the crowd holding its collective breath. What truth lay in the darkness, waiting to be brought into the light? And would it shatter or strengthen the connection they all craved? The silence was thick, like fog swallowing the air, every person waiting, hopeful but terrified. The dark figures stepped closer, their hands trembling. The musician's gaze pierced through the murky darkness, trying to identify the truth behind those haunted eyes. With determination, he stepped forward, the keys of the piano sitting idle, the air rife with unspoken words. Who are you? He asked, his voice steady despite the whirlwind around them. The crowd leaned in, breaths held, hope clinging to the musician's words. I come from the shadows, the figure said, voice barely above a whisper. I know the stories you seek. The stories that could change everything. Murmurs swirled through the crowd, a sense of unease creeping back in. Were they to trust this mysterious stranger? Fear crept back in, tightening its grip. The guards hesitated, unsure of how to react to a new player in this tense drama. I know what it's like to feel powerless, the figure continued, their voice rising, lifting the weight of the silence. But I've also seen how music can break through barriers. It can ignite flames in our hearts. Each syllable blended with the energy of the crowd, stirring memories of passion and pain. The musician could feel a connection budding, a flicker of hope against the relentless shadows. But the guards, sensing the shifting tide, began to close in, their presence looming large and threatening. Enough of this. You're being manipulated, shouted the lead guard, voice booming, sending echoes through the crowd. This is your last warning. Stand down. For a moment, uncertainty washed over the sea of faces. The defiance that had empowered them was fraying, doubts creeping in with each authoritative bark. Would the guards silence their music, extinguish their light? Don't listen to him. The musician cried, his fingertips brushing the keys once more. This is our moment. Together we can reclaim our voices. We do not bow to fear. Around him, the crowd shifted uneasily, the connection to the figure resonating, but still tangled in trepidation. The musician's heart raced, hands trembling. A risk was now his only choice, a gamble that could either reverse their fate or lead them into chaos. In one swift move, he turned to the shadowed figure. Tell us your story. No. We need to know. Eyes wide, the figure looked deep into his. There's a reason I'm here. A reason I linger. You see, they paused, the intensity of the moment thickening. I once played for them. I once had the same power you wield. But I let it go too soon. A murmur rippled through the crowd, leaving suspense hanging heavy. What had happened to this person? What dark truth loomed on the edges of their narrative? The discord between dark and light tightened. The crowd hung on every word as the tension grew. Every story, every note the figure began, has a cost. I was cast aside, forgotten. But I learned now that we can be more if we choose to rise. Music isn't just sound, it's our weapon. The power is in us. With that, the musician's heart pounded even louder, resonating with every soul around him. There was something electric in the air, something transformative lingering in the balance. It was a call to unite, to fight the authority before them, but just as conviction swept through the crowd, the guards took another step forward, their expressions hardening. The moment grew perilous, the tension achingly taut. Make your choice. The musician yelled, heart racing, hands hovering above the piano. Would they listen to the voice of freedom, or would they remain shackled in fear? And in that critical moment, as the dark figures past loomed over them, a bell tolled somewhere in the distance, echoing a fate yet to unfold. What truth lay hidden within that darkness? Would they listen, or would the shadows consume them all? The next move belonged to the crowd. The energy crackled in the air, the crowd holding its collective breath. The musician's hands trembled above the keys, poised between hope and despair. The guards advanced steadily, their shadows stretching like dark claws snatching at the flicker of rebellion igniting in the hearts of those gathered. Decide. The lead guard commanded, his voice slicing through the tension, a whip of authority. This is your last chance to disperse. But it was the shadowy figure who spoke next, a thunderous urgency lurking in their words. Do you feel it? They asked, eyes glistening, scanning the crowd. The pulse of creation? Music isn't just a tune, it's a lifeline. The atmosphere shifted as curiosity intertwined with fear. Hands began to grip each other, solidarity forming, igniting small whispers of resolve. The musician found courage in the darkness. He leaned closer to the figure, desperate to know, to understand. What do you mean? He urged, his voice steadier now, filled with a genuine yearning. What happened to your music? The figure stepped forward, dragging shadows along with them. blending with the darkness. They took everything from me, every note, every whisper of sound. It felt like drowning, but I found a way back, they said, their voice breaking, growing softer, yet resolute. In silence, I learned the power of my own voice. And now it's time to help others find theirs. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Eyes darted toward the guards, then back to the musician. Time hung thick with uncertainty, like a pendulum at its apex, about to swing one way or the other. The musician seized the moment. What if we don't wait for the silence? What if we create our own sound? Together. He let his fingers fall onto the keys, resonating a heart-stopping melody. It was a symphony of defiance, laced with desperation and hope. At first, it was solitary. The haunting notes echoed through the air, drawing the guards' focus like moths to a flame. The crowd felt it wash over them, wrapping them in sound. They swayed, unity rising as the dark figure joined in, their voice weaving with the chords, lifting the moment into a vibrant tapestry of music that danced in the shadows. Sing. Share your stories. The figure urged, their passion scattering fear like dust before a storm. The crowd hesitated briefly, but instinct took over, voices awakening from the depths of silence. Each person joined in a rush of human emotion that clashed loudly against the guard's imposing threats, but the lead guard's resolve hardened. Enough, he bellowed, hands raised in protest, a flicker of panic kindling in his eyes. This is an act of rebellion. Then let it be. The musician roared, his melody soaring. This is our stand. And in that moment, a sound shattered the night, a cracking mingled with shouts. The guards began to surge forward, their authority crumbling under the onslaught of music and voice. Panic rippled through the crowd as the first blows landed. Someone screamed, the melody faltered, a raw gash marring the rhythm. The musician's heart raced, adrenaline pumping through his veins like fire. Fight for your song. Fight for your voice, cried the figure, their shadow blending into the chaos, an inexplicable force propelling everyone forward. Waves of bodies surged together, swelling against the guards, pushing back. The chaos turned primal, a fierce struggle for expression, for identity, for the power to be heard. Just when it seemed like hope could drown, the dark figure's voice rose above the fray, resonating with clarity. Remember who you are. You are not powerless. But in the turmoil, something unexpected happened. A flash caught the musician's eye, a deep, piercing light cutting through the dark. What was that? He thought, fear creeping back in with a new question tightening his chest. The sound of a siren wailed in the distance. It echoed over their voices, an ominous prelude to what might come next. Would reinforcements arrive? Would they succeed in their rebellion or face something worse than despair? As the clash of voices surged and subsided, a thought lingered. Like a ghost, what would happen if they lost their fight for freedom? Would the darkness swallow them whole? The answers loomed, just out of reach, leaving the crowd teetering on the edge of revelation and chaos. A tremor of uncertainty swept through the crowd as the distant sirens grew louder. Each wail struck like a hammer on an anvil, a grim reminder that the moment could tip either way. The musician's fingers hesitated above the keys, but then the haunting notes spilled forth again. The melody surged, raw and powerful, a testament to their determination. The crowd clung to the music as if it were a lifeline. Keep singing. The shadowy figure urged, their voice a beacon amidst turmoil. They pushed forward, weaving through bodies, never losing sight of the musician. Determination radiated from them, a magnetic force drawing courage from the depths of despair. Just then, a brutal shove broke the music's spell. A guard crashed into the crowd, his batons swinging wildly. Fear twisted in the air as the crowd scattered, but the figure remained steadfast, arms outstretched. Don't let fear drown your voice, they shouted, rallying the people with a fierce intensity. The musician's heart pounded. He caught sight of the guards barking orders, their faces rigid with authority, but beneath that veneer, he saw flickers of doubt. Could they be shaken? Could their fear be twisted against them? As the thudding of marching boots echoed closer, the musician kicked the tempo up a notch. Notes clashed like swords in a battle, picking up speed, racing against the encroaching terror. The crowd began to pulse with energy, retreating no longer. With each resonating chord, buried stories emerged, fueling voices that united in harmony. Suddenly, someone lunged, their fists raised. The musician's breath caught at the sight, a threat to all they had built in this one fleeting moment. But the figure stepped forward, their silhouette framed against the chaos, firm and unwavering. Focus on your truth. Share your spirit. No weapon can silence you. Their words were an incantation, weaving a protective spell over the throng. The musician glanced at them, feeling their power surge. It was more than just one solitary voice. This was a symphony of humanity rising against oppression. He closed his eyes, letting the music flow freely through him. What if this melody could shatter fear, awaken courage? What if it could forge a path to freedom? Without warning, a voice rang out, piercing above all others. "We are not your puppets." The woman at the front of the crowd cried out, her fists clenched. The declaration sparked a renewed fire, sweeping through the throng like lightning. Each person began to chant and roar, echoing her defiance back to the guards. But then crackle. A sudden flash of light exploded overhead, illuminating the tension. The thump of heavy boots was closer now, reinforcements, and they were armed. Panic coursed through the musician again. "We can't give in," he yelled. "Stand together." But as the crowd pressed closer, he felt the dread of separation loom. They were moments away from a confrontation that could shatter everything. Then, just as their voices merged into a wall of sound, the shadowy figure leaned in, eyes fierce. "This could be our moment, if we are willing to fight. Feel the heartbeat of this place, it's alive." In that instant, the musician faced a choice, a truth written in the beats of the melody. Could they pivot toward hope amid the chaos? Or would surrender wrap its icy fingers around their hearts? As the guards readied for a charge, chaos erupted, the air heavy with uncertainty. Heart racing, he prepared to play a final song that may change everything. What if this was their last chance to reshape their fate? And with that burning question, the night poised on the edge of liberation or doom. The air was electric, thick with anticipation and fear. The musician's heart raced like a drumbeat, his hands hovering above the piano keys, a battleground between hope and despair. The crowd held its breath, the tension palpable, and for a moment, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. Then, with a swift determination, he struck the keys, pouring everything he had into that first note. It rang out, clear and bold, like a battle cry echoing in the night. The melody surged, wrapping around the crowd and lifting their spirits. One by one, the people joined in, their voices merging into a powerful chorus. They sang not just to drown out the darkness, but to reclaim their narrative, to fight for their existence. "Together," he shouted, urging them. "Together." The chorus grew stronger, crashing against the guards like waves against rocks. The musician felt it, every voice was a thread, binding them together in this moment. He let the notes flow, each crescendo a declaration of their determination, each rest a beat of their collective heartbeat, but the guards were resolute, pressing forward with an impenetrable shield of authority. "This is your last chance," one barked, brandishing a baton, metal glinting in the illuminated chaos. The cold, hard truth loomed, but the figure in the shadows stepped closer, eyes blazing with spirit. "Your silence will not save you. Fight back," they yelled, their voice igniting a fire within the crowd. Then, something shifted, not just in the atmosphere, but in the core of everyone gathered. The musician noticed it first, a glimmer of recognition sparked in the eyes of a few guards, a flicker of doubt about their own purpose. The darkness they wielded began to lose its grip, chipping away at the wall of authority. "Play louder," someone from the back shouted, raising their arms like a warrior ready for battle. "Show them who we are." The musician seized the opportunity, his fingers flying over the keys, weaving the chords of defiance into the air. The melody swelled, a fierce tempest, echoing the shouts of hope rising around him. Once again, they transformed, no longer just individuals caught in despair, but a unity of voices refusing to back down. With unwavering resolve, the shadowy figure stepped forward to stand beside him, their voice blending seamlessly with his melody. This is our moment not just for us, but for every voice that has been silenced. The guards hesitated, uncertainty bleeding through their ranks. Reality surged like a flood through the crowd, washing away doubt. They could sense the power resonating in their united voices. It was a power rooted in every struggle, every moment they had fought to be seen and heard. "Stand strong," the musician roared, a surge of adrenaline pushing him towards the climax of their anthem. This was their collective triumph, one that threatened to shatter the chains imposed by fear. And then it happened. As the music crescendoed, a weight lifted. The sirens wailing in the distance faded into a dull roar, replaced by the symphony of liberation. The guards exchanged glances, caught in a spell of hesitation that had never been there before. "What if," one whispered, the authority of their post starting to crack. Suddenly, things exploded. One of the guards dropped his baton, stepping back as if struck. "We're not just doing our job, we're losing control," he muttered, fear evident in his eyes. The musician knew it was working. This was the moment for clarity. "We can choose join us and let the music set us all free. We're not enemies. We're all here in the same fight." The moment of choice hung thick in the air. The crowd held its breath, voices quieting as they waited for the guards' response. The musician's heart pounded, fear mingled with anticipation. Would they stand as one or let the struggle continue? And just like that, something shifted. The guards wavered, uncertainty flickering across their faces. The air buzzed, electric with potential, as sparks of courage ignited in the crowd. Slowly, one guard stepped back, then another. The third eventually dropped, his baton joining the voices. I want to be free too," he exclaimed, eyes wide with realization. The ripples spread through the ranks like wildfire, pulling others in, igniting courage. The musician couldn't believe it. This was the change they had fought for. And slowly, like the breaking dawn, heads began to nod amongst the remaining guards, faces softening. The melody soared, now a triumphant anthem, their voices rising higher, shaking the very foundation of every shadow that had loomed over them. "Together, what we create can't be silenced," the shadowy figure shouted, the strength of their words embedding courage deep into the hearts of everyone present. As the final notes rang out their song, a cathartic eruption of all the pain and victory they had been carrying, hope wrapped around them like a warm embrace. The guards lowered their weapons, tears mixing with the laughter of freedom and joy that cascaded through the crowd. The musician looked around, taking in the faces that had once been so distant, now united in exuberance. Every laugh, every note was a step towards something beautiful, something real. He felt the shadows of his past lift, dissolved in the light of connection and purpose that embraced them all. "Thank you," the musician whispered to the crowd, his heart swelling with gratitude. "For standing with me. For changing everything." And as the sounds of celebration erupted around them, he realized the journey they had shared wasn't just about this moment, but about the promise that together, their songs would never fade. What lay ahead was unwritten. But fueled by the flames of hope they had ignited, their next chapter sparkled with endless possibilities. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Real fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.